My name is Jessica Birch, and I'm with the AmeriCorps VISTA Training Unit here at the Corporation for National and Community Service. Assisting me today off-screen in the producer role is Jenny Farrell from Education Northwest. You'll see Jenny in the chat and the Q&A to assist you during today's session and to help get your questions answered. I'll be co-presenting today with Amy Kanata. Amy has been engaged in various national service projects at Education Northwest and has been working with VISTA since 2008. For the past 4 years, she has been focusing on supporting the work of VISTA supervisors by developing resources for the VISTA campus, designing and delivering webinars, and writing curriculum for the supervisor's orientation. I'd also like to give a warm welcome to our guest speakers today, Michelle Eastman and Jordan Frazier. Michelle Eastman is Vice President of Marketing and Communication for Rainbows United Incorporated, a not-for-profit in Wichita, Kansas. Rainbows serves more than 3,500 children from birth to age 21 with special needs and their families in the local community. Under her leadership, Rainbows applied for and secured positions through the AmeriCorps VISTA program, as well as several interns. She embraces her challenging role as a supervisor, mentor, and encourager, and seeks to inspire each individual to greater confidence and accomplishment beyond their year of service with Rainbows. I'd also like to welcome Jordan Frazier. Jordan has served as the project coordinator of Turn the Page KC since May 2015. She oversees the organization's AmeriCorps program, communications, volunteer recruitment, and community outreach. Jordan earned her undergraduate degree in organizational communications from the University of West Florida. After graduating, she served as an AmeriCorps VISTA with Turn the Page KC, where she formed partnerships between local schools and businesses. Most recently, she served as a research assistant with the Department of Public Affairs while earning her master's degree in public administration from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. She focused her studies on nonprofit management. So as I mentioned, these two great speakers will be speaking with us today from two different projects, but also from two different perspectives. So Michelle has worked as a Subsite supervisor, and Jordan is currently the project director for her organization's AmeriCorps VISTA project. These different perspectives, they'll be speaking from what the role is of someone who's a project director and how they've worked with their subsites, and also from what you guys mostly are, subsite supervisors, and how you've worked with your VISTA members as well as your project director. So, what are we going to talk about today? Today's webinar is really designed to help you understand your particular role as a supervisor. We looked through some of the registration and we saw that most of you are brand new, like in your first 6 months of being a VISTA supervisor. And a lot of you are like, there's so much to know, it's a little overwhelming. So we want to make sure that this webinar really gets to what you need to know as a VISTA supervisor, and that's what we're here to do today. So our webinar is structured in the following way. And it asks these specific kinds of questions. So how do you fit in with the VISTA program? What do you need to know to be a successful VISTA supervisor? What do you need to do to be a successful VISTA supervisor? And also, where can you find resources that will help you be a great VISTA supervisor? I also want to mention that throughout today's presentation, we will be sharing specific tools and resources to help you support your work. These strategies and activities have been compiled into a 2-page document called Subsite Supervisor Orientation Resources. This list of tools and resources was included as a link in the webinar registration reminder that was emailed to you. So in that reminder you received, it should have been attached. But don't worry, we will also post this document directly on the VISTA campus along with the webinar recording. So we are going to move on to our first chat question. We really kind of want to know, a lot of you are brand new supervisors in your first 6 months, then I think the second majority of you are within your first year or so. So what type of resources do you look for as a VISTA supervisor? So just tell us. Enter it into the chat box and make sure you send to all participants. We want your comments visible to everyone. One of the great things about these webinars is that people really learn from one another. So make sure you put all of your ideas and questions and types of resources that you look for in the chat, and we will read some of them out of here. So, and Amy just put in there, thank you, Amy. What type of those resources do you look for? It looks like Linda here looks for community resources. That can be a lot of different things, maybe resources specific to your community. So I'm serving in Ketchikan, Alaska. I need resources for my specific community. Or maybe the kind of community you serve with, the veterans community. I need information on working with veterans. Let's see here. Lauren here says funding and also getting partners. Lucretia here says volunteers resources. That can mean your VISTAs, or that can mean the volunteers that you recruit for your organization. Patrick here said peer resources and input from our VISTAs too. That's great. As I mentioned, Patrick, you're like reading my mind. This is where you guys learn a lot from one another. Supervisors learn a lot from one another and what's worked for you, what hasn't worked. And that's why I'm really excited to have Michelle and Jordan here with us today to really talk about what they've experienced. Daniel here says that he looks for leadership, like creating goals and plans for success. Lauren here also said other programs that are already in place in the community. And like she said, no need to reinvent the wheel. Lauren, you're also reading my mind. I use that term all the time. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Someone's already done it. Let's see how we can partner with them. And this is kind of under the same vein. Marilyn here says resources available from related groups and agencies. So just keep those coming. What type of resources do you look for as a VISTA supervisor? Keep them in here. Keep them coming. Maybe one of you knows the answer to some of these. Maybe you have a good suggestion. But what I'm going to go ahead and do now is talk a little bit about one of the great resources that we have. Throughout today's session, we will be referring quite a bit to the VISTA campus. So the VISTA campus site includes dedicated sections for VISTA members, VISTA leaders, and VISTA supervisors. The supervisors page contains go-to resources for help on managing your VISTA project and connecting with your supervisor peers. If you've not already visited the VISTA campus, we encourage you to check it out after the session. Jenny is going to post a link into the chat. It's vistacampus.gov. It's a great resource. It's a great way to connect with other VISTAs, with VISTA leaders, and most importantly, your VISTA supervisor colleagues. So now I'm going to turn it over to Amy, and she's going to get us started here with how you fit into the VISTA family. Amy, take it away.
Thank you, Jessica. This is Amy Kanata in Portland, Oregon at Education Northwest, and I'm really excited to be here today because supporting all of you and making your jobs easier is really one of my passions. So thank you for having me today. So let's go ahead and just dive right in and learn more about how you fit into the VISTA family. So as you can see, you reside within a strong network of programs all across the country, made up of national AmeriCorps VISTA projects and state offices for each state. The framework that you see on the right is a good example of how projects with subsites are structured. Of course, the number of subsites and the VISTAs for each site differ across various projects. As a subsite supervisor, also referred to as a site supervisor or sub-grantee, you will work very closely with your intermediary organization, also referred to as project sponsor or project director. You and your intermediary will divvy up the responsibilities of managing your VISTA project. So each partnership is unique, as you can imagine, so it's important to communicate early and often with your intermediary to outline both roles and tasks, and we'll talk more about that a lot today. Not pictured on this chart, but crucial to success are also VISTA leaders, and VISTA leaders play an important role in our network. They support and coordinate projects that have at least 6 VISTA members, and I know we have a few leaders on the call, so shout out to the leaders. So in general, the intermediary organization is ultimately responsible for all aspects of the program, but the role of subsite supervisors is crucial. So shared tasks that you'll help with include things like recruiting, interviewing and selecting candidates, providing training opportunities for VISTAs, day-to-day supervision and support of VISTAs, including monitoring attendance and use of leave days, and then also collecting data for reports. So a little more about how you fit in. The relationship that you have with your VISTA member really impacts both you and your member. It also impacts your project through those day-to-day interactions that you have with them. And we hope that those positive interactions lead to long-term success and outcomes for your project. Many VISTAs say after service that their supervisor had a big influence on them. So this is kind of a big deal to be working with this person for a year. For supervisors, it's also an honor to have the opportunity to work with someone who has volunteered a year of their life as a VISTA, and we hope that members will reflect back after their service and name you as an influential person in their life. It's also important to remember that an inattentive supervisor can possibly have a negative lasting impression. So this could influence VISTAs away from an exciting future in public service. So the most important thing to remember is that your role is important and that you're shaping a VISTA member both personally and professionally. So now we're going to take a look at an important resource on VISTA Campus that we share with supervisors when they attend the in-person training, and it's also available to you online. This is a task list that was designed to help divvy up the tasks between you and your intermediary, or project sponsor, project director. We use those terms interchangeably. The document includes links to resources for each of the various tasks. So it'll be important for you to work with your intermediary to discuss and delegate project tasks. And what you can do is you can access this resource on the campus, and it includes links to help you learn more, as well as links to various tools for each of the tasks. And we have formatted the webinar today to follow this task list. So the good news is you've actually already checked off a couple things on your list. So now I'm going to walk through some of the key background information that everyone needs to know about CNCS and VISTA. So we're moving into the need to know area. One of the main goals for today for us is to have you examine the mission of the VISTA program. And with that in mind, we'll look at a couple things about VISTA. First, we'll look at the history and key facts of the VISTA program, VISTA's mission, and then the role of the VISTA member. As a Subsite supervisor of a VISTA member, it's really important that you become familiar with the background and mission of AmeriCorps VISTA. Your members are going to arrive at their sites with a good understanding of the VISTA program, and it's important for you to have a grasp of both the background and mission so that you can help your VISTA operate with the same focus and stay connected to that mission. As you all know, VISTA, which stands for Volunteers in Service to America, started in 1965 as part of the War on Poverty with the mission to build capacity of nonprofit organizations and communities to help bring individuals and communities out of poverty. In 1994, President Clinton started AmeriCorps, and VISTA was incorporated into the AmeriCorps network of programs. It's also important to know about the impact that VISTA members have in their communities. So in 2015, VISTA's built capacity of more than 3,000 nonprofits and public agencies. They secured $222 million in cash and in-kind donations for their sponsors. That's more than twice what Congress has given AmeriCorps VISTA to run the entire program. VISTA's recruited, trained, and assigned 1.2 million community volunteers. So that means for every VISTA serving in 2015, they brought in another 154 more volunteers to serve their clients directly. And then just one more amazing stat, the National Center for Children in Poverty estimates that 16 million children in the U.S., about 1 in 5, live below the poverty line. This has made it possible for their sponsors to serve 2.4 million of those children in after-school programs, tutoring, and assistance with food security. So this is pretty impressive. So let's take a look then at more of the core of VISTA, capacity building. And we're going to start off with a poll. So as you know, VISTA's roles are to build capacity. So let's do a quick poll to gauge what you already know about capacity building. And Ginny, open the poll. So here are your questions. Capacity building is A, create, expand, or strengthen an organization's systems or processes. B, provide services to the identified recipients or clients of a program. C, transfer knowledge, products, and relationships to the staff and volunteers of the program site. D, carry out the clerical work and administrative tasks of the host site. Or E, I'm not sure yet, but I'm looking forward to learning more. So take a couple minutes to complete the poll. Looks like A is the leader right now, create, expand, or strengthen an organization's systems or processes. We're going to give you a couple more, maybe about 10 more seconds, and then Jenny's going to close the poll. This is a smart group, Jessica. We have most everyone choosing A, which is certainly part of capacity building.
That's right. Yeah, I didn't even write the answer on the board this time.
So Jenny just published the results. Everybody should be able to see those at this time. And awesome, the majority are around the right answers, which are A, C, and E. So let's go ahead and look at the official definition and dive into this a little bit more. I know that several people had questions about capacity building versus direct service in the registration. So here's the official definition. When a VISTA member focuses on capacity building, it allows your organization and the community to sustain the VISTA's project activities once the project period has ended. So this is different from direct service activities, which provide assistance directly to clients or projects in the short term, but don't necessarily leave lasting capacity like we're looking for. So ensuring the sustainability of the VISTA project is the supervisor's responsibility. The way the VISTA members contribute to this process is by building capacity of both the organization and the community. So let's go ahead and take a look at some examples. So here's a project that many of you are familiar with. A VISTA member has been placed at a new Habitat for Humanity chapter to help build volunteer programs. So let's do a chat. What type of activities do you think this member might do for Habitat if they're building volunteer programs? And what you'll want to do is enter your ideas into the chat panel. If you don't see that panel, you want to click on the little speech bubble that says chat in the upper right. What kind of activities would a new Habitat for Humanity VISTA engage in if they were building a new volunteer program?
All right, Amy, there's already a ton coming in. I can't even keep up with them all. So a lot of recruitment strategies and plans. Linda here said teach residents how to build homes. Team building, recruit volunteers. There's a lot of recruitment going on here. Organizing and training volunteers. So once you have them, what are you going to do with them? Train them, organize them. Creating a volunteer database. That's great, Mandy. To track hours, waivers, you know. That work is hard. You want to make sure you have those safety waivers there from those volunteers. A lot of building databases, creating volunteer manuals and forms. So making sure you know what that policy is for those VISTA volunteers, I'm sorry, those Habitat volunteers. Let's take a look here. Information sharing and needs assessments, creating a marketing plan to recruiting volunteers, and a strategy to retain them. So what kind of volunteers are you looking for? What's the time commitment? How do you keep them engaged? That's great. Let's see here. Looking at what soft skills and hard skills are needed. Amy, you're right. This is a very smart group here.
Yeah, you guys could probably teach this session for us, so thanks for bearing with us. Hopefully you'll learn something new as we go through. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the examples of both capacity building and direct service activities for a new volunteer VISTA at Habitat for Humanity. You guys really touched on the capacity building activities and more. We just included a few here. But here's some examples of direct service activities that a member would need to avoid. And that would be working on a home that's under construction, driving the agency van each week to pick up local high school volunteers, completing landscaping for each of the new homes, although that sounds kind of fun. And then also maybe things like mucking out or cleaning out damaged homes after a natural disaster. Those all would be considered direct service. So as we mentioned before, the role of the supervisor is to make sure that the VISTA is focused on capacity building and that they engage in direct service activities only in very limited circumstances. For example, to learn more about the community being served, or maybe to test out a new idea or curriculum or policy. So Jenny just put a link in the chat that you can learn more about capacity building. We also have a game on the VISTA campus that you can use with your members. So do check out some of those resources on VISTA campus. So we're all experts now in capacity building. So let's go ahead and move on to the next important piece of the puzzle, which is VADs. So really, the VAD helps ensure that your members stay focused on capacity building activities. It's really the position description for each one of your VISTA members. And in addition to the fact that the VAD is a CNCS requirement, it's also a powerful guide for planning and implementing most of the major responsibilities, including selecting a VISTA candidate. It's also helpful in guiding and supporting members and also assessing performance. VADs help focus expectations for members and also define what's realistic for one person to accomplish within a year. The VAD is also a supervision and coaching tool. It informs how the supervisor works with the member. It can also serve as a training needs assessment tool. So that's why clearly written activities are important. They'll allow VISTAs to identify additional skills, knowledge, and resources that they may need to accomplish the expected activities, and then communicate those needs with their supervisors. So we talked to them about this at pre-service orientation. VISTAs will receive their VADs, and they'll identify where they might need additional training, and then they'll write that down in a document called the Individual Development Plan. And then we ask them to bring that plan with them when they get to their placement site and share it with you. This plan can also be used as a template to guide goal development and professional development for PSO blend members. And it is available on VISTA campus. We don't have the link here, but we'll be sure it's included in your resources. So now I'd like to turn it over to our first guest speaker, Jordan Frazier, so she can talk about what this looks like in her experience. Take it away, Jordan.
Thank you, and thank all of you for having me join this discussion today. As Jessica mentioned, I started my career as a VISTA member, and now I have the privilege of being a VISTA project director. So I've seen many sides of the supervisor and VISTA relationship, and I'm really happy to share a little bit more about my experience with you today. I'll just mention, as a project director, I manage 10 sites, and we have 15 VISTA members. So it's extremely helpful to me for our subsite supervisors to be well-informed and proactive about their roles and their responsibilities. Today I'm going to talk about several things that really highlight how important your role as a subsite supervisor is to your VISTAs and your project's success. During my time as a VISTA and as a project director, I really learned that managing expectations can really set this relationship up for success, starting with the service year timeline. So as a supervisor, you should really be thinking about your VISTA's service year and what projects and objectives they'll be working on over the course of that year. I typically recommend dedicating the first 2 months to exploration so they really get a strong start with your site. Even if they're simultaneously working on projects, I think it's important for them to dedicate some time each week to becoming an expert on their organization's mission. In addition to thinking through the bad and the objectives and activities in terms of a timeline, I think it's important to ask your VISTA about their personal and professional goals for their service year. That way you can put them on a on-ramp for whatever their next endeavor might be after VISTA. And next, we talked about the VAD a little bit, and you can use that as a roadmap to develop that timeline, thinking about the service year. So talk to your VISTA about their VAD, starting from the interview, and I can't stress that enough, all the way through their service year. I'll mention if you find that the reality of your VISTA's day-to-day activities sort of deviate from the VAD, you might have that conversation with the VISTA and your project sponsor. My state office allows us to submit amendments to VADs to ensure that they accurately reflect what the VISTA's role is throughout the year, so don't be afraid to keep it fresh. It's also important to make sure that your VISTA fits with the organizational culture. So if you're the one conducting the interview, feel free to walk the candidate around your office during the meeting and tell them a little bit more about the culture, and that will help you get a sense that that person will really thrive alongside you. When that VISTA feels part of your team, even though they're only there for a year, they're likely to be highly motivated and really produce amazing outcomes. And lastly, think about your VISTA's motivation for serving in the first place. Personally, I serve as a VISTA. It gives back to my community that gave a lot to me when I was growing up. And my motivations as a supervisor are very close to that goal as well. So I really encourage our Subsite supervisors to talk to their VISTAs about why what they're doing is important, so they can really see how what they're doing fits into a larger overall goal and mission. So I'll turn it back over to Jessica Birch.
Thank you, Jordan. As Jordan mentioned, managing expectations is an important piece that you want to ensure that you focus on with your VISTA member, whether that's around their day-to-day work at your site, the expectations before they even get on site, and really that leads to when you're interviewing the member, making sure that they are well-informed and that their year of service is really put into perspective before they make that really huge commitment. So a key component, along with what Jordan has already mentioned, is the benefits that VISTA members are eligible to receive. So throughout your VISTA's service year, and even before they start service, they will more than likely have questions related to their benefits. We do recommend that your VISTAs use the VISTA campus to learn more about their benefits, but if they do have additional questions, they should contact the VISTA Member Support Unit, or VMSU for short. They can be contacted through the National Service Hotline, and the VISTA Member Support Unit really manages the VISTA's service benefits, and they can help address issues that arise before, during, and even after service. So let's dive deep into what are some of those areas and what are some of those specific benefits. So the first, and I'm sure the one that most of you get questions about, and I know this is in the registration data, is about the living allowance. So VISTA members are paid every 2 weeks, which is not the same as twice a month. And the living allowance rate is determined by the county that the member is serving in. So I'm sure that your project director or your state office has told you, hey, for your county, this is the amount they're receiving, their monthly pay plan. Make sure that you notify your members that that is not how much they should expect to receive in a month, because they are paid every 2 weeks. The preferred method of payment is direct deposit. However, paper checks can be distributed if need be. Federal taxes are withheld, but state taxes are not. And VISTA members are responsible for understanding their tax responsibilities in their state. Another big one that we get a lot of questions about, and I'm sure you do as well, are the end of service benefits. So after successfully completing service, VISTA members are eligible for one of two benefits: the Education Award or the end-of-service cash stipend. This is in addition to their living allowance. It doesn't deduct anything, doesn't cost them anything to have one of these. So a few things to know about the Education Award. It is good for 7 years after they complete service, and it is taxable in the calendar year that it is used. With the cash stipend, it is paid out via direct deposit at the end of the VISTA's service, and it is taxable in the calendar year that it is received. Another big one is health care. So the VISTA program does not provide health insurance, but we do provide a health care benefit for both those members who have health insurance and for those who were legally exempt to having to have health insurance. VISTA members who have health insurance, whether that's through a parent, a spouse, through Medicaid, TRICARE, any of those, can enroll in the VISTA Health Care Allowance, which provides reimbursement for qualifying health care expenses, which are limited to essential health benefits. VISTA members who are legally exempt from having to have health insurance are eligible to enroll in the VISTA Health Benefit Plan. This is a safety net plan, and it covers basic health care needs. It doesn't cover pre-existing conditions, but it does cover most pre-existing prescriptions, which is a great benefit. Both of these benefits are administered by International Medical Group, or IMG for short, and more information can be found on their website, which Jenny has just posted in the chat. Another benefit that your VISTAs may be eligible to receive are travel reimbursements. So VISTA members who relocate more than 50 miles for service are eligible for a relocation mileage reimbursement, and that's from their home to their project site, and a one-time settling in allowance of up to $550. If the candidate or if your member has questions about their relocation benefits or what they need to do in order to get their reimbursement, the VISTA Member Support Unit will be able to assist them. The VMSU also does provide support for emergency situations, such as a death in the family. Initial requests for emergency travel should go through the state office, but the VMSU will ultimately book travel for the member or handle their reimbursement. I can tell you from personal experience, I had a death in the family when I was a VISTA member. I was able to use the emergency travel benefit, and it was very smooth. It was a great process. So it definitely does exist. So if something happens, make sure that your members follow up. And another one we have here is child care. So most issues we find that VISTAs run into with regard to the child care benefit is related to their application being denied or that they don't have the proper documentation to go with their application. So VISTA members should work with Gap Solutions Incorporated, which is our AmeriCorps child care provider, to resolve any of those issues. But if they do need additional assistance, the VMSU can work with them to make sure that they are resolved. So now, you kind of know about the benefits, but what about the terms and conditions of service? As a VISTA supervisor, it's important for you to know the rules and regulations that you as a supervisor must adhere to, but also what your VISTAs must adhere to. If a member violates one of the terms and conditions, you as the Subsite supervisor should contact the VISTA project director immediately. From there, the project director will be in contact with the corporation state office. Different violations have different repercussions, and for the protection of the project and for the members, it's critical to act promptly. So just as a brief overview of some of these. In general, VISTAs cannot engage in political activity, religious activity, lobbying, or union organizing as part of their VISTA service or while perceived to be a VISTA. They can go to rallies or attend church service on their own non-VISTA time, but cannot engage in either type of activity while serving or while identifying as a VISTA. That includes like wearing their VISTA polo, wearing a lapel pin, anything like that. They can't represent AmeriCorps, CNCS, your organization when doing those things on their own time. Let's see here. So the next thing is time and attendance. So as a supervisor, you'll want to monitor your VISTA's time and attendance to ensure that they're serving full time, which for most organizations is about 40 hours a week. VISTAs are entitled to 10 days of annual leave and 10 sick days, and they should receive any federal holidays recognized by your agency that the rest of your staff takes. A quick note on nepotism. So a person cannot hold the position of VISTA member if a member of his or her family exercises supervisory authority over the person. So if you have a niece who would be a great VISTA, that's cool, but you cannot be her supervisor. Also, a person cannot hold the position of a VISTA supervisor if he or she is related to the CNCS program official responsible for the VISTA project. So hopefully you're not related to any of your project or, your corporation state office people. That would be a no-no. Now about early terminations, and this could also include resignation of members. So if something comes up and a member decides to leave service early, you should contact your VISTA project director immediately. And from there, they will contact the state office. Following the early termination procedure is critical as it affects pay and their future ability to serve. So if a situation arises where a VISTA just isn't working out, might need to be removed or terminated or any of those sorts of things, you as the supervisor can request the member's removal from the project, but you can't terminate them or demand their removal for the VISTA program. There are a variety of reasons while things don't work out with a project and a member. Sometimes it's just not a right fit. It'll be up to the state office to review the documentation submitted by you and your project director to determine if a member needs to be terminated or if they can remain a VISTA and potentially transfer to another site. I highly recommend that you read the Supervisor's Handbook on the VISTA campus for specific steps. And contact your project director if you think you might anticipate needing to request a member's removal. It is important to remember that you don't have the authority to remove a member from a project. Only the state office can do so. There's a legal process that we must follow, and there's an appeal process available to members to ensure that their input is shared and heard. So please, if you anticipate something, talk to your project director, and they'll move it up to the state office as necessary. Also, another thing here is outside employment. I know there were some questions, I think, in the chat here about outside employment. So VISTAs are allowed to have outside employment, but there are a few key things to know about that. The first is outside employment must not conflict with project service or service hours, and it cannot conflict with any applicable laws or VISTA program requirements or policies. So we tell this to VISTAs at PSO that your VISTA service must take priority. If you have another job, fantastic, you can do that. But your other job has to work around your VISTA service, not the other way around. Also, your VISTAs cannot be employed by the sponsor of the project under any circumstances. So if you work for a university, if you are a university that has a VISTA and they're working in Veterans Affairs there, but they want to do some tutoring through the school on their off hours, it's a no-no because they cannot work for the sponsor. It's seen as a huge conflict of interest, and it cannot happen. So make sure you don't have your VISTA doing that either. And last but not least is that you, the supervisor, must agree that the outside employment will not interfere with their VISTA project, and that if it does interfere, that the VISTA may be asked to either end their employment or end their VISTA service. So you need to sign off. There's a form that they fill out, that they send to you for you to approve, and then it goes up to the state office. So, make sure to talk that over with your VISTA. If you have any questions about would this be okay, does this sound like it would conflict, talk with your project director and your state office as it fits. So, another thing that you need to know is about PSO training. So I've been talking about PSO, which stands for Pre-Service Orientation. AmeriCorps VISTA offers a pre-service orientation to address the terms and conditions, benefits of service, and key programming principles of the VISTA program to the VISTA members at the start of their service. And we do this in two different formats. One is a face-to-face training, which we call PSO Classic, and another is a blended training that employs distance learning and field work, which we call PSO Blend. So the blended approach combines a variety of learning modalities, such as online capabilities of the VISTA campus, live webinars, face-to-face training during on-site orientation and training, self-directed action learning in the community and at the project site, and other virtual type of meetups with their online classroom. PSO Blend gives the VISTA program, as well as you at your projects, some flexibility in meeting recruitment targets. And it removes those challenges that VISTA members may have related to travel and time away from a home. We know that everyone has a busy life, so sometimes people just can't travel, and this really helps to take care of that. So as you can see on the screen, there are some key differences between PSO Blend and PSO Classic. So a few, as we mentioned, Classic requires travel to a location for 3.5 days, but the Blend, no travel is required. The Classic is presented, like as I said, in 3.5 days, but the PSO Blend is sequenced over 3 weeks. There are a few key differences. Because of the online, the emphasis on online learning, having access to technology is essential for VISTA members participating in PSO Blend. And by technology, we mean they must have an individual computer with high-speed internet access, a webcam, and a telephone at site starting on their first day of service. They have to have their own computer and their own phone line so that they can participate in the webinars and the other virtual meetups. You as a VISTA supervisor must ensure that the IT systems and equipment will allow your VISTA to watch videos, download documents from the internet, and stream webinar systems via WebEx, kind of how you're doing now through this system. The VISTA training unit will send you information about PSO Blend events where you have candidates enrolled in about 2 weeks prior to the date of the PSO event. So as we mentioned, and as you can see on the screen, PSO Blend assignments dovetail with your on-site orientation and training. If you know you will have candidates participating in a PSO Blend event, you should tailor your on-site orientation and training around the PSO Blend assignments. We have found, and our data shows, that PSO Blend is most effective when supported by an engaged supervisor. Amy mentioned that earlier. You have a chance to make an incredible impact on a VISTA member, and we want to make sure it's a great impact. And VISTAs are highly effective when supported by supervisors. So we have developed resources on the VISTA campus to help you understand PSO Blend and what your responsibilities are. So the link to those resources has been posted into the chat. It goes over all of it. It talks about the curriculum, how things are laid out. We even did a webinar for supervisors that some of you may have been on that kind of talked about the changes that we've done to PSO Blend. So please take a look at that. So I've been talking for a lot of time, and I'm sure there are some questions. That was a lot of information. So we're going to take this time to take a few questions. We're going to have a Q&A at the end. So for this Q&A section, we're just going to do everything through the Q&A panel. I'm going to answer some questions that may have come up now, and then we'll move on to our next piece. So let me find here, and I'm going to also ask, Amy wants to, if she sees any chat questions that have come up, please let me know. Let's take a look. Someone here did ask, Mandy, you asked here, 2 weeks notice of Blend training events isn't much time for planning. Is there any way to get that information further ahead? So thank you for that, Mandy, and let me clarify really quickly. So you should be in contact with your project director in your state office, and they should kind of give you an idea way ahead of time of what events you should be planning for your VISTA members to attend. Our calendar for the whole year is finalized probably October, November of the previous year. So our calendar is finalized. We know when our PSO Blend events are going to be, so we know all of that. And your project director and your state office should be in contact with you about that. So you should definitely know way ahead of time, way before 2 weeks. 2 weeks before is when you're given specific information about that particular PSO Blend. So that's when you're given the registration links for the webinars that they need to attend, when you're given the session times and the fieldwork assignment due dates for that blend, and that's when your VISTA candidates are also known about it as well. So definitely the timing of events, when those events are happening, that is already set in stone, and you should talk to your project director about that. But more specifics related to that specific PSO are given to you about 2 weeks ahead of time. All right. So let's take a look here. Kamika here said, can VISTA take personal time off? Yes, they can. All VISTA members are given 10 personal days. So other people call them personal days, vacation days, RDO, or not RDO, that's regular day off, but like holiday or personal days, whatever you want to call it, they're given 10 of those and 10 sick days. So yes, your VISTAs can take those days. Let's take a look here. Casey asked, do VISTA members have a choice of what PSO training they can attend, or is that up to the host site? So the way that it works and which PSO your VISTA members go to is really worked out between your project director and the state office. So they kind of work and see what is the best training modality for your VISTA to attend, and then they tell you what to recruit for based on that. If you have somebody who definitely cannot travel, then definitely, PSO blend is something that you'd want to explore. On the other side, if you know that one of your sites does not have great internet connection, or your VISTA just is not comfortable working on a computer, then maybe that's something they should explore a PSO classic event. While you may, while your state office and while your project director may say, hey, you need to recruit for this PSO blend or this PSO classic, if there's a situation where you have a VISTA who would not succeed in either one of, in one of those, we'll always try to work something out so that person can get trained in the most effective way and can start service. So definitely talk to your project director in your state office if you have any concern about the PSO that your person's assigned to go to. All right,
Jessica,
Karen.
We've had several questions come in about holidays and how those work with the VISTA members' leave time. Can you address that?
Yeah, thank you, Amy. So holidays. So VISTA members, as I mentioned, get 10 personal days. In addition to that, they get holidays recognized by your agency, that like federal holidays recognized by your agency that other employees get. So if your agency takes off Christmas, your VISTA should get Christmas, and it should not deduct from their 10 personal days. So yeah, so hopefully that answers that. Amy, was there anything else specific to that?
No, I think that really does cover it, that members get the same holidays as your regular employees. There was a great question. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say one caveat to this, because this comes up quite a bit, is so, hey, we're gone for 2 weeks for spring break. Does that mean the VISTA also gets 2 weeks off? No. It's not a federal holiday. They need to be serving during that time. If you have any questions about that, talk to your project director or your state office, but the answer to that is they need to be serving during that time, and work should be found for them to do during that time if you have concerns about that.
Thanks, Jessica. Maybe one more and then we can move on. There was one that came in the chat from David that I thought was a great question. He asked, who is the supervisor's project director? Would that be the state?
So, well, okay, that's a question. So, David, without trying to ask you 20 questions about that, so it would really depend. So I'm just going to throw out an example of conservation legacy. We may have some conservation legacy supervisors on the phone. So conservation legacy is an intermediary project. They have a project director that I think is based out of West Virginia. And they have Subsite supervisors all over. They have some in, I'm going to throw out Minnesota. They probably don't have one in Minnesota, but they know they have VISTAs who serve in Guam. They have them everywhere. So if you're a Subsite in Minnesota with conservation legacy, who you should contact first is that project director of that intermediary. So you should contact that main contact for conservation legacy. And then from there, they will contact the state office. I'm not sure if you are a Subsite supervisor, if you're a single site supervisor, maybe you're an intermediary. But if there are any questions, you can always contact the state office. They can always point you in the right direction if you're just not sure. That's kind of the way that it's laid out. So we're gonna, as Amy mentioned, we're gonna move on from here. I do still see your questions. One reminder, please put your questions in the Q&A so that we can track them. I pride myself on remembering all of this, but I want to make sure I get all your questions. So if you could put all your future questions in the Q&A, and we'll get to those at the end of the session. Right now, I'm going to turn it back on over to Amy, who is going to kick us off with a poll.
Great, thanks, Jessica. So let's take some time to move into the portion of the webinar where we talk more about tasks that Subsite supervisors often need to do. So this is your to-do portion of the webinar as part of their role. So let's go ahead and take this poll and tell us a little bit more about what you're currently responsible for, or as you understand it, what you're going to be responsible for. So will you be recruiting candidates, selecting and screening candidates, conducting on-site orientation and training, meeting with candidates regularly for coaching, submitting data for reports, or maybe you're not sure yet, but you look forward to learning more. Take a quick gander at the poll that's up there on the right-hand side and tell us. You can click all that apply. So many of you will be doing multiple tasks on this list, and some may not be doing only one or two tasks on this list. Most folks, it looks like just early returns have responsibilities around recruitment. Great, so just go ahead and enter your tasks on the poll, and Ginny will close it in just a couple seconds. We're moving pretty quick here, guys. We want to keep time at the end for more questions. Great, so what I'm seeing is that most folks are responsible for recruiting, selecting, screening, and conducting interviews. It looks like most folks, almost 88% are, well, 88 out of 201 are conducting on-site orientation and training. Others are meeting regularly with candidates. That would be everybody, so that one should be 100% there for meeting regularly with, meeting regularly for coaching sessions. And then submitting data for reports, we have about 72 out of 201. And then there's some folks that are not sure, they're looking forward to learning more, and I know we have people that are brand new. Great, so let's go ahead and dive into some of these to-do items specifically. So first, let's talk a little bit more about recruitment, because this is a big one. Your first step in the recruitment process is to orient yourself to the format and purpose of each one of your position's VADs. So here we are again on VAD. As you know, the VAD guides the VISTA's year and helps define the type of person that you're hoping to recruit. The VAD is also the basis for the service opportunity listing, which is like your job posting, that VISTAs will see when they apply to your project. So the VAD's very important related to recruitment. You may be asked to participate in member recruitment and selection. So work closely with your intermediary to outline the specific tasks and roles. So for example, some Subsite supervisors take on all of the tasks for recruitment, which are listed here, while others only do a few. So it just depends on how your project is structured. The task list that we talked about earlier and that we'll provide a link to will help frame that conversation with your intermediary, and it also includes resources and tools for recruiting VISTA members. So you'll definitely want to find out what you need to do around recruitment and selection. And Ginny also included a link to the recruitment resources on VISTA campus, so check those out when you get a chance. And then next month, we will be offering a webinar on recruitment, so hopefully you can join us next month around the same time of the month, same day, to learn more about recruitment. So let's hear some examples of how Jordan's project organizes recruitment. Take it away, Jordan.
Thanks, and as Amy mentioned, different VISTA projects approach recruitment in various ways. So I'll just preface this by stating that our subsites have a relative amount of freedom to recruit and vet their own candidates. So, but regardless of how your project approaches recruitment, it's important for you as a supervisor to start that process by identifying the skills and the personality that's needed for the role that you're recruiting for. I know it's really easy to get caught in the trap of really liking a candidate's personality and hiring them only to realize that they might not be a good fit for VISTA or for the assignment. So before you start interviewing potential candidates, just take some time and write down those skills and that disposition that you're looking for. After you have that list, you'll be able to weigh it against an application and an interview. I can't stress enough how important it is to really develop a nice interview that will get those answers out of the potential candidate. The campus, the VISTA campus, has some great resources to help guide your questions. We actually, at Turn the Page, we use our VAD to guide the questions, and we have the VAD in hand at the interview to show the candidate. So after you figure out who you need to fill the role, I highly suggest utilizing your personal and your professional networks to find that person. What we do is we tap into people who are already doing great things in our community. So we start with them, and then we post on job boards and social media, and we even use our current VISTA members. They're really great resources, and they know of other people in the community who may be looking for a similar role. And remember, it really does take time to find someone great. They don't typically just fall into your lap. So start early, and when you get an early start on this, then there's not all of that stress in the last minute trying to get people enrolled into PSO. So after you recruit the right candidate, you'll need to start thinking about how you're going to retain that person. When I was a VISTA, I was afforded many opportunities during my year that helped push me forward. So as a supervisor, I encourage all of our subsites to do the same for their own VISTA members. First, I recommend letting your VISTAs take on important projects that allow them to come up with innovative solutions to problems that your community and your organization is facing. It really will give your VISTA a sense of pride to report the significant impacts that they've made, and they can really look back during their year and after their year and see something great that they've put in place that has helped make a big difference. Next, I recommend giving your VISTAs opportunities to plug into your own professional network. I use my network to plug our VISTAs into areas that they might be interested in learning more about. So if I know that they might be looking for a certain job after their service year, I actively connect them with people who are doing work in that area, even if it might not be related to their current role. And lastly, I can't stress enough how important feedback is to the professional development of your VISTA. I recommend checking in at least weekly, once a week, if not more than that, conducting a review or a feedback session at about the 6-month mark, as well as an exit interview when your year of service is done. I know that there's nothing worse for a VISTA member than muddling through a year and really not having any clue if they're doing a good job or not. So by giving frequent and thoughtful feedback, you'll create a nice balance of guidance and trust with your VISTA member, and hopefully that'll create a positive working environment, and ultimately that'll lead to impressive outcomes for your site. So this is my last slide, and thank you for having me. I'll stick around for the question and answers at the end, but back to you, Amy.
Great. Thank you, Jordan. I think it's always helpful to hear how things work at different sites and how different programs structure them. So thank you so much for being here today. I'm really glad that you brought up professional development. That's a really good segue into the next topic that I wanted to cover around things that you'll likely need to do, and that is OSOT. So OSOT stands for On-Site Orientation and Training. And this is an important piece of your job because it helps members settle in faster, and it provides them with the basic knowledge and skills that they need to get started on their project. So here's a sample list of some topics that you'll want to cover in OSOT. And these come from a detailed checklist. It's several pages that resides on VISTA campus, and it's also in the Supervisor Orientation Workbook. And this is something that's available to you. I recommend that you take a look at it. It's offered at the in-person training, but also available online on the VISTA campus. And it's important because it also includes worksheets and other resources that are shared in the face-to-face training. And Jenny went ahead and put a link there in the chat panel. So let's go ahead and look at the next piece. And we've talked a lot about coaching and support. But as you know, part of a successful year and part of a successful OSOT is providing ongoing professional development, which may look like coaching or support or mentoring. And this support, as you know, is critical to member success because there are things that they will need later on in their service year. And so I wanted to share a few facts with you from a recent study that was done by JBS International. You can see from the statistics that one-on-one supervision is very important, and we suggest, again, you've heard this several times, that you meet with your member or at least touch base with them weekly. There are some great resources in the Supervisor Workbook to help you frame those conversations. They're brand new. We just added them. So I encourage you to take a look at the Supervisor Workbook for some ideas around framing your check-in conversation. We also have discussed ways to communicate with members on several other webinars. So you can always access on-demand webinars for supervisors and watch recordings or look at slides by going to the VISTA campus and clicking on Connect and Learn, and you'll see a link for all the supervisor webinars. Jenny also just put that in the chat for you. In addition, there's links to member webinars. There are a ton of webinars available for members as well. So now I'm going to go ahead and shift gears and turn it over to Michelle, who will introduce herself and share some of her tips around regular communication. Take it away, Michelle.
All right, thank you, Jenny. It's great to be joining you on the discussion today. I'm excited to share with the group my experiences in working with VISTAs. Over the last few years, I've had the opportunity to supervise about 8 different VISTAs for their time. I have really enjoyed having VISTAs at Rainbows. It was a privilege to be part of their VISTA experience. The VISTAs that I supervised were in a volunteer coordinator role as well as a social media grant writer role. So that kind of helps you put that in perspective. I wanted to share a few practical things that I learned as a VISTA supervisor. One is really everyone is different. I know that seems obvious, but I just really found that to be true. Each one comes with communication skills. Some of those may be well developed, and some may have really never had the opportunity to interact in an office environment. So taking that into consideration, kind of meeting them where they are in that respect, and then kind of coaching them through to be successful. Also, a regular time to meet. I found that no matter who the VISTA was, it really worked best for us to meet daily at 10 a.m. The VISTA could count on that time with me to ask questions, clarify instructions, whatever was going on. They knew that I would be there, that they could count on me, and I knew that that was my time to give them new instructions, new projects, follow-up, and answer their questions. This worked well since all of my VISTAs happened to be in the same building. Although we were in the same building, our paths rarely crossed during the day. So having that specific meeting time was really key to clear communications and success of the VISTA in their year. One other thing that they taught me was that flexibility is important. If the VISTA needed to do an orientation, a volunteer orientation, or take photos of an event that was happening at our regular meeting time on a particular day, then we would reschedule. That way, I respected their time, and they also did the same for me. One other thing that came up in the experience is not everyone is a morning person. I had one VISTA that I ended up meeting with her in the afternoon. It just did not work for her to meet at 10 a.m. She was much better in the afternoon, and so we adapted that schedule. She would stay late. She did get the work done, but it was kind of an adjustment for me. And I learned kind of what her strengths were, and it worked out for us then to meet in the afternoon, and that did help her to gain some additional skills and experience and become successful. A highly organized VISTA and I were able to use a shared Google document. This helped us keep track of assignments on her plate. When they were completed, I was able to update that document daily, and it made the weekly reporting really easy for both of us. That may not work for everyone, but it really worked beautifully for that particular VISTA. When I have VISTAs coming and they're starting to communicate with people within the agency as well as externally, I have them CC me on their email communication. Some VISTAs are maybe used to communicating differently, and I want to make sure that when they write an email that they're going to ask the best questions, that they're going to formulate it in a way that represents the agency well, and I want them to be able to learn how to ask those particular questions. And sometimes if we're working on a project, I'll have them send me the email first so that we can work through it together, make sure that that is going to be successful when they send it out. I do the same with the VISTA if we're working on a project by CCing them, so they can see what I'm communicating about, how it impacts their project, and see kind of the string of emails and how the details come together. I find that it's a good training ground and helps keep everyone on the same page. So those are just a few examples of things that we've experienced and some practical ideas for being successful in the communication portion. Now I'll turn things back over to Jessica.
Thank you, Michelle. So now we're on to everyone's favorite topic, which is data, points collection, and reporting. So I know there were a few questions about reporting, so we want to make sure we get this to you. So in order to report to Congress and the Office of Management and Budget, federal resources, in addition to our leadership's need to monitor those use of resources, VISTA requires projects to track and report certain data. Your project directors, therefore, may ask you to report on some of this data. So first one, member is serving or member is not on site. This is basically time and attendance. This is essential. Payments to absent or resigned members is a debt collected by the Department of Treasury. Consistent errors with this data could raise to the level of fraud, waste, and abuse of federal funds. So if you have VISTAs who have resigned, please let your project director know immediately. Don't wait to report a resignation because you don't want to see a VISTA who resigned long ago, did everything they were supposed to do, get hit with a massive debt by no fault of their own. For the next couple of points, 2, 3, and 4, this data is used for a number of purposes. State office directors and state office program officers report on activities to our CEO and the agency, which then are used in outreach activities, reports, and press releases. So Amy shared a lot of data with you earlier about the great work VISTAs have done. That kind of stuff is what we look for and what we collect. The state offices also use them to ascertain whether the project as designed is effective or whether there needs to be an adjustment. And lastly, this data and these anecdotes are rolled up into the VISTA's report to the Office of Management and Budget and Congress, known as the Congressional Budget Justification. So with these, just a quick note, if you have great news of a VISTA's accomplishments, there's no need to wait until the end of a quarter or wait until your project director asks for you to give them this kind of information to let them know. So if your VISTA just won a big grant or hosted a large gala or was interviewed for the newspaper, we want to hear about it. We love to brag about VISTAs. So help us recognize their accomplishments. Send it to your project director, ask them to send it to the state office, and we'll definitely, shout their name to the mountaintops. Number 5 here, VISTA and CNCS performance measures. So these measure capacity building activities. So unlike 2, 3, and 4 that we talked about, this really asks you about your self-identified performance measures and milestones. Those with those 2, 3, and 4 does. I'm sorry, I'm being confusing here. So the 2, 3, and 4 asks you about your identified performance measures and milestones, but this data, which we call the annual progress report, tracks standardized information across all corporation programs. So this data is also used in our outreach and recruitment materials, universities, potential funders, and at recruitment fairs. So as you see here, this report may ask, how many hours of service was contributed by community volunteers as a result of your VISTA's work. Your project director may come to you for this data and information regarding your VISTA members and the work they're doing. You'll want to ensure that you have established a tracking tool to collect the data that's relevant to the program. There's a mobile tool that we use. It's called the VISTA Impact mobile app. It allows your VISTAs to collect data and send it to you so you can already have that information readily at your fingertips. More information about the Impact app can be found on the VISTA campus, and Jenny did just post a link in the chat. So we've talked about the data points and collection, but how do we collect them? So there are 3 main reports that we use to collect this information. So the first one is our sponsor verification report. That's that one that's basically time and attendance. It certifies that your member is serving full-time on-site, and that is done bi-weekly. The second is what we call the project progress report, or PPR for short. For newer projects, we look at this data quarterly. But for ones that are established, the schedule is often modified by your state office, so that usually then happens twice a year or semi-annually. And as I mentioned, it covers milestones, performance measures, and anecdotes about your project. And the last one is the VISTA VISTA Progress Report Supplement, or VPRS. This is the annual supplement to the PPR that reports on capacity building activities. And it is generally due at the end of October, so it's an annual report. Talk to your project director if you have any questions. Really, they're going to be the ones who are responsible for this, but they will more than likely look to you to collect some of this. So make sure that you understand with them what they're going to require of you so that you can be prepared when they come asking for it. So now I'm going to turn it back on over to Michelle, who's going to talk a little bit more about agency investment. Michelle?
Yeah, great. So at Rainbows, we saw having a VISTA position really as an investment in the agency's future as well as in the VISTA's future. I found it really easy to give back to the VISTA and give them really helpful experiences. One thing that we learned was that the VISTA should be on the same level of the organization chart as those that they deal with most. We found that this was really beneficial because when the VISTA needed information or cooperation, staff knew who they were, and they were more willing to engage with them because they had been in similar meetings and had shared kind of what the needs were and were on that same level. We also included the VISTA in many meetings for a real variety of experiences. We had them come to board meetings, be introduced, committee meetings, event meetings, planning meetings. I would go over with the VISTA anything that I wanted them to present at any meeting, so they'd be very well prepared and they could present with confidence, but it gave them the opportunity to be in front of the group, to ask for help of the members, and become familiar then with the different people in the different groups. It also helped for them to widen their scope, help them see opportunities that they might like to be part of by listening to what other people had to say. In the last 6 months of their service, I had VISTAs complete their resumes. We talked about what else they'd like to do as a part of their VISTA service as well as in the future. We talked about how to put down their responsibilities and their experiences in writing. We also talked about who they could use for references. I'm often a reference, and I encourage them to list me as a reference for them after they leave the agency and their VISTA service. I love knowing what they go on to do, and being a reference and supporting them in that way is really a great benefit for me. I sometimes get wedding invitations as well as Christmas cards from people who have been VISTAs, and that it's really neat to see what they're doing in their future 1 or 3 or 5 years later and the impact that made. We have had 2 of our VISTAs who went on to get jobs here in the community through contacts that they made during their VISTA year. It's fun to interact with them at that level in their new jobs, as well as hear from their supervisors about the great job that they do. And I really feel that it's a privilege to be part of their story. So thanks again for having me join you today, and I'll turn it back over to Jessica.
Thank you, Michelle. Man, I want to serve at Rainbows. You sound like an awesome place. So where can you find resources on the VISTA campus? So we've talked a lot today. I know this is a longer session than usual, an hour and a half for you guys, but we know that there's a lot of stuff going on here, so we appreciate you sitting with us. So first, a resource around training Subsite supervisors syllabus. So while this resource is directed at intermediary sponsors, it's a useful tool for Subsite supervisors, as it includes a pretty comprehensive list of various need-to-know items. We also have the campus self-study guide. As we mentioned, that is where the training Subsite supervisor syllabus is. We also have the checklist, the VISTA sponsor and Subsite supervisor major tasks at a glance. Great resource that's on the VISTA campus, and other supervisor orientation material. So as we said, this is kind of like a mini Subsite supervisor orientation. These are just a few of the resources. We do have that 2-pager that we have compiled, and it will be posted with the recording. It gives you a list of all the resources we've mentioned today. So what are some next steps? So you've participated, you're feeling ready to go, but now what? So here's some things that you can consider. So first, create a list of questions you have for your intermediary. Some of those could be, what kind of reporting should I be prepared for? How do you want me to help out? Should I be expected to help out with recruitment? What kind of things do you need? Also, set up this time to discuss the VISTA sponsor and Subsite supervisor tasks at a glance document with your intermediary. Make sure everyone knows who's responsible for what. This is so important, and it's been reiterated by a lot of us here. Block time on your calendar for regular check-in sessions with your members. It's critical. We find it to be one of the most critical parts, so please do this. Also, participate in other supervisor webinars and watch our webinars on demand. Our webinars are generally an hour long. This one's a little bit longer because we know there's so much information here. And last but not least, connect with other supervisors in the Supervisor Cafe forum. You will need to be logged into the VISTA campus to do so, but please do that. Share with us. Share on these webinars. We love to hear from you. So we're going to get to Q&A here in just a moment, but before we do, we just want you to see if you can take a few moments to do a quick evaluation for us. On the right side of your screen, you're going to find a quick poll where you can share feedback about this webinar. We do listen. We love to see what you guys want, what you want more of, what you want less of next time. Please, we read this and we frame our webinars around your needs. So please tell us what you need, what you liked, and what you want to see more of. And as we get started in that, and while you fill that out, we're going to do some Q&A. We've given you a lot to think about. We know there's still some questions in the Q&A, and some of you may want to ask a question over the phone. So I'm going to invite the operator to come back and just give some instructions on how to ask a question over the phone. Operator?
Thank you. At this time, if you would like to ask a question via the phone line, you may press *1. Please unmute your phone and record your first and last name clearly. When prompted, your name is required to introduce your question. To withdraw your question, you may press *2. Once again, at this time, if you would like to ask a question over the phone line, please press *1.
Thank you so much. So we're going to get to some questions that were asked on earlier. Please keep putting your stuff in Q&A. I do realize that it is 3:27 and we are ending at 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. We will stay here a little bit past 3:30. We want to answer the questions that people did have. But we also understand that you all are busy people. We do thank you for joining us today. And if you want to stay and if you can stay, we would love that. But this will be recorded, so you can always come back to it if you're not able to stay. So one of the questions I got here was mileage. Regarding mileage, is it anything over 50 miles round trip, or is it 50 miles one way? So a clarification about relocation mileage. So your VISTA member would be eligible for relocation assistance and that benefit if the mileage between their home and their project site is more than 50 miles one way. This is their home to move to their project site. This isn't like a daily commute thing. The VISTA program does not reimburse for commuting costs. So it's if they're relocating to like a new location. Diane also asked here, is there a policy for a VISTA doing professional development with our program? I'm not quite sure the question. Let me see if maybe I can get at it. Maybe your organization offers some professional development opportunities. Maybe they offer a training that they send their employees to. Maybe there's classes that they can enroll in, and they're through your organization. Can VISTAs do that? Yes. Yes, they can. We encourage that. Please, if you have something to offer your VISTAs like that, that's wonderful. We love to see that. You can't, like if someone's interested in an orientation or, like a training of some sort, you can't just be like, here's some money to go and do that. That's not allowed, but definitely if your program offers something and your VISTAs can attend, please, they'll be thankful to you, and that'll be a great learning opportunity. Let's take a look here. There was a question in here that I thought would be great for Jordan, which I know she's probably scared now that I said that. So let me take a look here what that was. Let's take a look. Amy, do you see any questions while I try to look for this one?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions coming in related to, let's see, there's a lot of questions, you guys, so bear with us as we organize them.
So I did find the one for Jordan.
Okay.
So Jordan, ready for this one?
Yeah.
So Diana asks, what if I need a certain skill in a VISTA, such as seeking funding, that I do not have the skill to train the VISTA to do? What should I do? Have you ever had that? And if so, like, what have you done?
Yeah, definitely, and specifically in development and fundraising, so that's funny that she asked that. What we've done, and it gets to the professional development question that was just answered, is we've seeked out other trainings in our community. One of our local community colleges offers classes, and we were able to enroll our VISTA member for free in one of those courses, and he went to those, and it really helped him and helped our organization. We also have an organization in Kansas City called Nonprofit Connect, and if your city has something similar that offers PD sessions for nonprofit professionals, encourage your VISTA members to go to those things to develop a certain skill that you're looking for. And Diana, that's such a good point, because you might find a VISTA member who would be perfect for that role and has a lot of potential, but maybe needs a little bit of help developing a skill. So I would certainly recommend seeking those out and encouraging your VISTA members to go to those things. That's a perfect opportunity for a VISTA.
Thank you, Jordan. So another question that came in was, Katie here asked, and it's kind of piggybacking off the question that was asked before the one was sent to Jordan. She said, VISTAs are not allowed to do direct service, but are encouraged to do professional development. If a VISTA is interested in direct service for professional development, is this allowed? So the professional development that your VISTA is doing on site and like during their VISTA service and you know, during service hours should be directed at a way that they can, that doing that training or doing that professional development can help them with their VISTA service. If they're interested in doing something like direct service, like I'm just going to throw something out there, if they're like, hey, I want to build a house with Habitat for Humanity as my professional development during work hours, can I do that? That is not necessarily, because it's direct service and you can't do direct service for their hours. I don't know the specific situation, so I would recommend talking to your project director and your state office to see if they have any recommendations, or if there's another way that that person can get professional development that they're interested in, but still have it be more indirectly related, indirect service, or more directly related to their VISTA assignment description. Let's take a look here. There is a question, and I'm going to try to find these. Apindra, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. You asked, is there a recruiting video that we can use to get the word out on VISTA? Something that motivates people to apply by seeing the video. So, with regard to that, we are currently in development of rebranding our VISTA. We're rebranding VISTA. And we do currently, we are working on different materials for supervisors to use to help with recruitment and those sorts of things. I do know that we do have 4 videos that we recently did in light of our 50th anniversary that kind of follow 4 different VISTAs and different projects and how they, what drew them to the project, what they did during their service year. I can go ahead and send those to you. I'm going to try to find the link here while we're going through some questions so I can just post it in the chat for everyone. But those are some great videos to send to people. But once we have finished our rebranding and new materials are out there, we'll definitely let you know. But that's a great question.
Jessica, I went ahead and posted the link to the VISTA, CNCS VISTA YouTube area so that folks could look at all the videos that are posted there. There are 10 videos, including the 4 videos that you just referenced.
Thank you, Amy. See, Amy's amazing. Thank you.
And then I also just wanted to mention that Beth had asked about what content is offered at pre-service orientation, or PSO. We do have PSO materials posted on VISTA Campus, so I went ahead and dropped that URL into the chat so that you can go and take a look at the workbook that's given to members and some of the other things that are covered during PSO. So you'll have an idea of how to work with members once they get to your site.
Thank you, Amy. And I know another VISTA, look at Michelle. Michelle's all great. Michelle said, you know, she also has some current videos that they've done of current VISTAs they've used on their social media. That's great. Go check out Rainbows. And then Tam also posted in here some other resources that have really worked for them. So these are some great things coming in here. Let's take a look. Any other questions? One other question that came in was with regard to health care. Someone here asked, can a VISTA member get the health benefit plan in the middle of their service year? So the long and short of that is no, for the most part. So VISTA members who start, they are, starting VISTA is considered a qualifying life event. So VISTA members are given 60 days to, you know, apply for health insurance or apply for an exemption, and they have 60 days to enroll in the plan that we offer, either the allowance or the benefit plan. An exception to that kind of thing where it's past the 60 days, and this happens quite a bit to the VISTAs, is some people age out. They turn 26, and they can no longer be covered under their parents' insurance, and they just happen to turn 26 during their VISTA service year. In those situations, they can look for, you know, do they have to have other health insurance, or can they get an exemption? And if they need to switch their benefit plan, they can in the middle of their service. But if there's more specific questions like that, you can go to the I Am Global website that we posted. But it's not unheard of that can happen. Let's take a look here.
Jessica, while you're looking, I noticed that a question came in. It came to Jenny, and the question was about how to support, if you're an intermediary, how to support your Subsite supervisors. And I just wanted to point out that we have a section on VISTA Campus called Working with Subsite. And that's specifically for intermediary organizations, and it provides a variety of resources around training your Subsite supervisors, communicating with them, orienting them to VISTA, so on and so forth. And I'll go ahead and put the URL into the chat.
Thank you. And so on that same vein, I don't know if this is, yeah, I think this is the same question here. So, you know, Jordan, would you have any tips on how you, on how VISTA supervisors should be overseen by the intermediary? Do you have like a tip, like this always works out really well, like monthly calls, or anything like that that you try to do with your Subsites?
Communication, that's the biggest thing, just keeping those lines open so they know that if they're having any issues, they can come to me, and I want them to. And the good things, too. I really push that. I'm like, tell me about the good things, because I want to elevate that to the state office, and, you know, they elevate it to the national office. So, yeah, keep those lines of communication open with your sponsor. I think that's so important.
Thank you, Jordan. And Michelle, what about you? What's been a positive thing when you were just a Subsite supervisor? What was one thing that worked really well in your relationship with your intermediary?
I think just knowing that you could go to them with questions and that they would be responsive. If the VISTA had a question that I couldn't answer, I knew that I could, you know, kind of move that on up the chain and get back to my VISTA with the correct answer.
Thank you. That's great. So it looks like we only have like about one more question here, and so a question came in about leave days. So are they supposed to notify us the day before in regards to their personal time, or is it okay to notify us the same day of work stating that they are taking personal time off? So how I would manage that is I would I would hold your VISTAs to the same standards you do to your employees. So if you have a standard in your office that says all requests for leave must come in 2 weeks before the, the proposed time off, I would hold your VISTAs to the same thing. I would very, very, very recommend against saying, hey, yeah, just notifying me the day of you're going to take leave. You don't want to find out someone's going to be gone for a week after that week's over because they just told you each and every day that they're going to take off. It's going to help you manage in the long run when they're going to take time off. So I would just hold them to the same standard as your employee. And I'm going to go to the phone. Are there any questions on the phone?
I'm currently showing no questions on the phone line.
Great, thank you. We do have another question here that came in. Gloria asks, regarding spending time with the VISTAs. I have 11 VISTAs, which includes a VISTA leader. The leader has weekly one-on-one meetings with each VISTA, and if something comes up during those meetings that needs my attention, she lets me know. Is this okay? So, Jordan, you've managed a lot of VISTAs. You're currently managing a lot of VISTAs. What would be your recommendation on this?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
I can, definitely. So Gloria says, I have 11 VISTAs, which includes a VISTA leader. The leader has weekly one-on-one meetings with each VISTA, and if something comes up during those meetings that needs my attention, she lets me know. Is this okay?
I would say, yeah, that's perfect. That's the same way we go about it, and if you have the privilege of working with a VISTA leader, I would say have that person check in with the VISTAs and elevate any issues. I feel that that works really well because the VISTAs tend to be a little bit more open and honest with the VISTA leader. They view them a little bit more of as a peer, so when issues arise, we're able to kind of catch it early. So talk about that, though, and, make sure that it's clear if that VISTA leader is having those weekly meetings with the VISTAs, if there's a level of confidentiality and the VISTA member might not want those issues shared, just make sure that's clarified. But, yeah, I think that's great.
Thank you, Jordan. And one thing I do want to say about that is also make sure that the roles are clearly defined. So, we want to make sure that the VISTA knows that what your role is as a VISTA supervisor and what the role of the VISTA leader is. And I would recommend if this is something, that you're going to do, that the VISTA leader has a one-on-one meeting with them, that's great. I would recommend early on in your VISTA service keeping those scheduled one-on-one meetings with your VISTAs. A VISTA supervisor, as we said, can make it or break it for a VISTA. So making sure you set up those times for your VISTAs to sit down and meet with you, knowing that they can come to you is really important, and making sure that they understand your role as their VISTA supervisor and that they don't mistake the VISTA leader as the VISTA supervisor. And I'm going to send this one over to Amy. Amy, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Nasha asks, is there a time tracking tool that AmeriCorps has? I'm assuming they're talking about time and attendance.
Yeah, so I do not know of a time and attendance tool. There is the VISTA Impact app, but that is more for activities that the member is doing versus their time and attendance. But maybe there's something I don't know about. So if others do, please chime in.
Yeah, I was thinking about that with the VISTA campus, and I don't remember seeing anything. What we find, Nasha, that most people do is they use the same system that they do for their employees. So, for example, when I was a VISTA member, my VISTA supervisor had me fill out the same timesheet that the employees did. It was just a system that was already set up, and it was easy just to plug me in. So, yeah, Jordan, Michelle, do you have any other kind of tips on how you manage time and attendance of your VISTAs?
Yeah, yes, Michelle. And we did the same thing. We have our Chronos system where our staff, log in at the beginning of their day and out, and we were able to set up our VISTAs so that they could use that same system, and I could get I could log into it and see their time and attendance. and then there was no, no payment generated from that, but it was really helpful.
And this is Jordan. I'll just mention we're a very small staff. There's 2 of us, so we don't have a system in place that currently keeps our time. So we utilize Google Docs, and I think that works perfectly, or Excel, something like that. As long as they're keeping record of it, that's the most important thing.
That's great. Yeah, when I said my place had a system, it was an Excel spreadsheet. It was definitely nothing fancy. So it looks like we've answered most of the questions here. So I do want to just thank everyone. I know we're about 15 minutes past. I want to say thank you all for being troopers and staying with us. I hope we've answered all your questions, and if not, you can still get in contact with us after. If you do have any additional questions, you can reach us at vistawebinars@cns.gov. And we hope to see you on our next Supervisor webinar, which is next month, March 28th, and it's around VISTA member recruitment. We've done some recruitment webinars before, but we're completely revamping this, so please check it out with us. And our next VISTA member webinar is creating high-impact images for better outreach, which will be on the 28th. This is one I want to attend. It's really a cool thing, a way to develop great images for recruiting, outreach, and really getting your projects out there. So please have your VISTAs join us. Please, we hope to see you again. And thank you all. Keep doing the great work that you're doing, and have a great day.